Another episode of Story Time with Mrs. Smith. Here we have the story The Holy Twins, St. Benedict and St. Scholastica. And I found this book on Open Library where I made a free account, and it has shown me so many different books. I'm so excited. I can't wait to bring this to the classroom and to use it during our classroom time right now. All right, so let's go through the story. Okay. The Holy Twins. Many hundreds of years ago, in the small town of Nursia, in the mountains of northern Italy, there lived a twin brother and sister named Benedict and Scholastica. Enjoying the run of their family land, Benedict and Scholastica climbed trees, fed stray cats, and raced each other to the tops of the hills. Day in and day out, they were inseparable, and anyone would have said that they were the best of friends. But they also squabbled loudly, especially when Benedict would make up too many rules for their games, and Scholastica would laugh and ignore them. Their family was an ancient and well-respected one. And the custom of that time was for young noblemen such as Benedict to be sent to study in the great city of Rome, while girls received an education closer to home. So when the time came for Benedict to go to Rome, Scholastica was sent to live in a monastery of nuns in Nursia, where she learned to read and write. Benedict and Scholastica were sad to be separated, but Scholastica was comforted by the women of her new community and was eager to help them fulfill Jesus' command to feed and clothe the poor and to tend the sick. She also loved the prayers that the women sang. Every day, she missed Benedict very much and prayed that even though she could no longer look on her brother's face, that she would never leave his heart. Benedict loved learning all that a young nobleman was expected to learn: Greek, Latin, writing, law, but he missed his sister, Scholastica, and the hills of Umbria. He longed to tell Scholastica all that he saw in the great city, which was noisy and crowded compared with home. Benedict was troubled by the cruelty he witnessed there, and the way the slaves were treated as property rather than human beings. Benedict realized that while Rome held many great opportunities for his success, there were also many dangers to his soul. Competition among his fellow students had grown so fierce that they no longer trusted one another. Even Christian clergy were tempted by power, and rival factions would battle over possession of the churches. Benedict found this deeply disturbing and was grateful for the prayers of his sister. Although his family expected him to finish his studies and become a well-paid civil official, Benedict began to desire a quieter, simpler life. He left the city for a rural village where he joined a small group that spent each day reading the scriptures, praying the Psalms, and doing honest labor to support themselves. Soon, however, Benedict began to feel that God was calling him to live all alone, so that he could devote nearly all of his time to prayer. He struck out on his own, and as he neared the lake of Subiaco, seeking a place that was wild and remote, he met a monk named Romanus, who gave him a monk's robe and told him of a cave nearby. Once Benedict was settled there, Romanus began to sneak out of his own monastery, against the rules, to take food to the young hermit. Benedict's cave was at the base of a steep cliff, and Romanus had to lower the food in a bundle tied to a sturdy rope. He attached a little bell to the rope so that Benedict would know when the gift of food was coming. Benedict clothed himself in animal skins. His hair and beard grew so long that when shepherds looking for stray sheep happened upon him one day, they were frightened. They thought Benedict was a wild beast. But when he spoke, he blessed them, and his voice was so gentle that they knew that they were in the presence of a holy man. They began to visit Benedict often, sharing their simple meals with him and listening to the Bible stories he told them. The shepherds began to tell others about the holy hermit, and over time, more and more people visited Benedict, seeking a blessing and his prayers. Soon a group of monks nearby asked him to be their abbot or leader. Benedict reluctantly agreed. But he had been alone for so long that he was extremely strict and demanding of the monks, and they tried to get rid of him by giving him poisoned wine. As Benedict was blessing the cup, it broke, and he realized what the monks had done. He departed for another cave to live alone. But Benedict's reputation as a holy man spread far and wide, and soon 12 small monasteries had sprung up around him. 3 were high on the mountain, and the monks had to climb up and down its steep slopes every day to get water from the lake. One day they asked Benedict if he could move nearer to the lake. Benedict said nothing, but went with a young monk named Placid to the top of the mountain, where he prayed for hours. As he left, he put 3 stones on the spot. The next day he told the monks that at the place where they would find 3 stones, God had provided a spring of water. And indeed, the stream flows down the mountainside to this day. The city of Rome had become even more violent since Benedict had left it, and many noble families of the city began sending their sons to Benedict to receive instructions in the Bible and in prayer. Young Placid was one such student, and Morris was another. One hot, lazy afternoon, when Placid was sent to fetch water, he carelessly dropped his bucket in the lake and fell in after it. A strong current swept him far from shore. Benedict, who was praying in his room, knew in his heart what had happened, and he quickly summoned Morris and told him to go to Placid's rescue. Morris asked Benedict to bless him, and then ran out of the monastery as fast as he could. Morris was so intent on saving Placid that he didn't stop running when he came to the shore, but raced across the water and pulled poor Placid up by his hair. Not until the 2 young men were safely back on land did Morris realize what he had done. I didn't do that. I couldn't have, he said, amazed. It must have been the abbot's doing. Benedict told Morris that it was his readiness to obey that had caused the miracle. Then Placid spoke up and said that Morris was pulling him out of the water. He had not seen Morris, but rather the hood of the abbot's habit above him. Tales such as this one spread throughout the region, making a local priest jealous. Pretending to be a friend, he gave Benedict some poisoned bread. As Benedict was about to taste it, a raven swooped down and knocked the bread from Benedict's hand. He took it as a sign that he should move on. Benedict went to the top of the high mountain, Monte Cassino, where he founded a monastery for men who wished to live in harmony with one another and with their God. The disorder and injustice that had troubled Benedict in Rome had made the city vulnerable to invasion, and for many years the monks watched armies advancing and retreating in the valley. Their monastery became a place of refuge for peasants and nobles alike. After Benedict had settled at Monte Cassino, he and his sister, Scholastica, decided to meet once a year. She traveled with a group of nuns to the gatehouse of the monastery, and Benedict would come down the mountain with several monks. As Benedict told his sister about everything that had happened to him since he left Rome, Scholastica decided that she liked the gentle man her brash young twin had become. He had learned so much, she decided, from his many trials. He was no longer impatient with those who were not as smart or as quick as himself. And Benedict admitted that his experiences had taught him to be more kind than strict. Then Benedict told Scholastica that he was writing a rule that he hoped would help his monks to pray, work, and live together in peace. He said he wanted a common-sense rule that real people could live with, one that would give them room to experiment and even to fail, and then, with the help of God, learn from their mistakes, as he hoped he had done. Scholastica was impressed, but she was also secretly amused, or not so secretly. So much of what he had told her, she said, sounded like things that she had learned by trial and error in her own monastery, and she laughed, really laughing now. Isn't it funny, brother, that you had to travel all over Italy to learn some of the things that I discovered staying in one place? Then she offered him wise advice. Brother, she said, as the leader of the monastery, you must listen to others with the ear of the heart. Brother and sister looked forward to their yearly meetings. Usually, Scholastica and her sisters would depart in the afternoon, but one day Benedict and Scholastica became so wrapped up in their talking that they did not notice that the sun was setting. Benedict did not want to spend the night away from his monastery, but Scholastica decided to continue the holy conversation with her brother. Exasperated, her brother replied, "Sister, what are you saying? It is completely impossible for me to remain outside my monastery." Sounds like he's being a little too strict with those rules again, right, first grade? At the time he said this, there was not a cloud in the sky. But when her brother refused her, Scholastica began to pray, and with her fingers entwined and her head resting on her hands. When she raised her head, violent thunder and lightning erupted outside. Scholastica's face was wet with tears, and rain poured down from the heavens. The more she wept, the more it rained. Benedict realized that he would not be able to climb the mountain to his monastery that night. Not for the first time in his life, he cried out, "Sister, what have you done? May God forgive you." And as sassy as the girl was, who had scrapped with him in childhood, Scholastica replied, "You wouldn't listen to me, but God did. Go now, if you can, back to your monastery." Benedict, knowing he was beaten, stayed with his sister, praying and talking all night. The monks were surprised to see Benedict give in, but the very next day, when they were told their brethren about the miraculous rain, the monks began to realize that it had been caused by love. Scholastica's desire to see her brother was stronger than his desire to follow a regulation or rule. Because of the Gospel of John puts it, God is love, and Scholastica was able to do more because she loved more. 3 days after her visit, Benedict saw the soul of Scholastica rising to heaven in the form of a dove. Overcome with emotion and grateful for their last visit together, he shed tears of his own, and after announcing her death to the monks, he sent for her body so that it may be laid in the tomb he had prepared for himself. Soon after Scholastica's death, Benedict had another vision. He was praying in the middle of the night when he saw the entire world being gathered up in a single ray of light. Dark and light, earth and heaven were all one in God's sight, and it was a wonderful sight indeed. Not long afterward, Benedict sensed that his own death was approaching. He asked his fellow monks to carry him to the church where he died, as the monks prayed over him. At that very moment, monks in another monastery saw a vision of Benedict walking on a road of light that led from his monastery room to heaven. His body was placed as he had asked in the tomb with his beloved sister Scholastica. As Gregory the Great wrote in Life and Miracles of St. Benedict, in this way it happened that those two whose minds were always united in God were not separated in body by the grave. And here at this page, if you want to pause the video, you can read a little bit more about the amazing rule of St. Benedict, and there's a couple more pictures. I hope you've enjoyed our story of St. Benedict and St. Scholastica and the love that they had for God and for each other, and the love that I have for you. Bye, guys.